and welcome to Infertility Unfiltered, where fertility experts and warriors are joining forces to provide you with tips, tricks, information, support, and inspiration so that you can take back control of your life and get your baby on board. Hi, I'm Jennifer Robertson, and today we are completely blessed to be joined by Rebecca Elliot. Now, Rebecca is one of the great fertility warriors. Her story will blow your mind. She's also the face behind the Instagram account IVF Been Trying, which I am a huge fan of. Rebecca is an artist, she's a teacher, and she portrays her 3-year IVF journey in ways that inspire, entertain, connect with, and support others, including myself. Now, today we're going to be talking to her about her story and the lessons that she learned along the way to help you out on your journey. So thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca Elliot.
Thank you for having me. I'm blushing with that intro.
I just think that you're amazing. Now, I would love for you to tell us about your story, what you went through, and the lessons that you learned along the way.
So we started our IVF journey with male factor infertility. We knew fairly early on that there was something not quite right. So went to the GP as everyone else does. And the GP recommended that we go to our local clinic with the local, IVF clinic with the local fertility specialist. He was also an OB, so he was focused a lot on the babies. So when we went into the clinic the first time, we were a little bit bombarded with the amount of baby photos that were up everywhere. It wasn't until much later that started to become a bit of a problem, because it felt like when things weren't going so well, why are all these other people having babies and we're not? Initially, the clinic was really lovely. The people we spoke to were fine. But with I call them 3 rounds, even though the first one was cancelled because of not enough follicles. In the first round, we didn't feel great about the doctor, but as people in Victoria would know, we have to go through a very long process. It took between 5 and 6 months just to get into the clinic because of all the forms, the police checks, all those things that we had to fill out. So we were just happy to finally be in a clinic with all the boxes checked, all the counselling sessions attended, all of those sorts of things. So when it came to starting, we were just excited to finally, this is going to happen. And of course, I went in and I'm sure there's many other people who go into their first round of IVF thinking this is it, this is going to work for us. And because it was male factor infertility, I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm going to be fine. This is going to work. And so when the follicles, there wasn't enough follicles in that first round, I still to this day think that was the hardest day out of everything. Even with my chemical pregnancy later on down the track, that first day when I didn't know that things could get cancelled that early, my mum was with me that day that we found out that it was going to be cancelled. And she told me much later that she didn't have a good feeling about the doctor. I just wish she had have said something then. But, you know, she was also being a good mum and just looking after me. So the second round at that clinic, we didn't have any embryos to transfer. There was one that was frozen. And a month later, when the transfer was supposed to happen, they rang me the night before to tell me that it had failed. And it's not until my experience at a new clinic later on that I realized, why did they know that it had failed the night before, when it really only takes about 2 hours for an embryo to thaw and be ready for transfer. So I didn't know that was not something that could happen. And so that was heartbreaking as well, not to go to work when you should have been having an embryo being transferred. And we sort of said to the doctor at that stage, if this happens again, what are you going to do differently? And he said nothing. We just keep doing more of the same. And I was on a ridiculously high dose. Even the pharmacy had to ring me and say, do you approve of the amount of drugs that you're being given? And I'm like, I don't know, sure. I just wish I had done more homework at the start. But the thing about IVF is, I'm not a doctor. I don't know these drugs. I'm just going with what is best for me. So,
and that's the thing, you know, we rely on the professionals. They're the ones with the degrees. So a lot of the time and I did the same thing with mine. You hand it over to them and go, okay, well, I trust that you know what you're doing, and I'm going to hand it all over, because it really is overwhelming. And there's
absolutely.
so much stuff involved in it. So you trust them to do and guide you in the best way possible.
Absolutely. And there was one appointment that I went to without my husband, and I remember thinking, oh, this doctor, maybe he is all right, you know, because he came in, he sat next to me, he said it's going to be okay. But that was the only time I ever got any sort of personalization with this doctor. Every other time it was very blank face. Yep, no, it's cancelled, or no, this didn't work. I just didn't feel right. We did one more round with this clinic, and this was a round I had a different nurse than what I had in previous rounds. I didn't gel with her. And when I went to the hospital for my egg retrieval, the embryologist actually came out and said to me before my egg retrieval, I'm so sorry that thaw didn't work last month. That only happens in 5% of cases. And at that stage, my husband had gone off to do his sample, and I just burst into tears. I had tears streaming down my face, and she didn't know what to do. So she walked off, and I'm lying on the hospital gurney, ready to be wheeled into theatre with all this tears and, you know, that proper crying. And not one person in that theatre room said it's going to be okay. The anaesthetist just stuck the thing in my hand, and it was done, you know. And when I came out of the theatre, I was still upset because I didn't know what was really happening. I had a student nurse sit with me for an hour, and she was saying all the cliches that people shouldn't be saying. She really had no idea what I just had done. And they actually forgot about me in the hospital. So Michael, my husband, was out waiting for me, wondering what had happened. They didn't tell us how many eggs were retrieved. It was just not cool.
Can I just say, I just, you know, and I feel emotional. I feel physically angry for you for that happening. And I am so sorry that happened to you, because this journey is tough enough without negligence on behalf of the people who we are paying a hell of a lot of money to look after us. Like, I just think that is absolutely disgusting. Now, I know that there's a lesson in there. There is a huge lesson in there. Do you want to talk us through that?
So I would say the biggest lesson there was we didn't have a good feeling about this doctor after our first egg retrieval. So my second round, first egg retrieval, we didn't have a good feeling about him then. My hindsight would be to go back and say, you've learnt, it's time to find someone new. But it's the fear of the unknown at that time for me. I'm not making excuses for myself, but neither of us felt good about this doctor. We felt good about the clinic up until that point. It was that third round where I had that horrible transfer. The doctor, it was a Sunday. There was no receptionist or nurse on duty. So we just had to let ourselves in the clinic. And the only people that were there at that point was the embryologist. And she came out and said, we're waiting on the doctor. And the doctor was over an hour late. Now, that was my first transfer. So I had never had a transfer before, obviously, and we were told to have a full bladder. And because there was no nurse or receptionist there and the doctor was late, I had no one to say, you know, you could go and empty your bladder. So I was in a bucket load of pain. And when we went in, because it was the embryologist and the doctor asked me to hold the ultrasound, and he was getting frustrated with me because I wasn't holding it in the right spot. I was just clenching my husband's hand. So I had one hand holding the ultrasound, the other hand was just squeezing my husband's hand, going, I'm in so much pain between a full bladder, and it was awful. The whole thing was awful. And now I know what a good transfer looks like. We were in there for far too long. This guy took forever to get the embryo in there. Everything was just awful. And I've never run to the toilet so quickly after a transfer like I did with that one. And that big fat negative that came after that was very soon after the transfer. I think it was 7 days after I'd had the transfer. And when I started bleeding early, I rang the nurse and she got really defensive with me. She wasn't sympathetic. And that was the other thing. She was like, well, you just let us know when you want to do another round. And I was like, no, I'm not coming back to you. That whole thing was just horrible. And if I wouldn't have had to go through that if I had have trusted my gut earlier and gone to look for another doctor. So you get a feeling, and I should have trusted myself, I think, with that one.
Yeah. And so then you changed to another fertility specialist, and then what happened then?
Yeah, we had quite a few months off. I had looked at some of the bulk billing clinics, and we were going to go with one of those, but because of the severe male factor, some of the bulk billing clinics, we didn't qualify. So I genuinely didn't know what to do. And my beautiful auntie, who went through IVF 20 years ago to get my cousin, rang me and said, I know it's not my place, but do you want to go to the fertility specialist that I went to? He's still in operation at the clinic in the city. Do you want to go with him? I can send you his details, and I can put in a word for you. I didn't realise that her fertility specialist is the medical director at Melbourne IVF. So I don't know whether people get into him easily or not, but when we walked in, oh my goodness, it was just a whole different thing. We walked in and he was personable. He was like, oh, you live in this suburb. I grew up there, blah, blah, blah. You know, it was just, it felt like he was getting to know us as people, not just numbers that can improve his clinic's reputation or those sorts of things.
Yes, and I think that's what is so important as well. Like, we want to be seen as a person, not just a statistic. And I had not exactly the same experience, but I did, my first IVF specialist that I went to, I just didn't gel with her. And she actually didn't call us back after the first roadblock, which she gave up on us. And that, it's like this betrayal. Whereas our second, specialist that we went to, it was like, it just feels better, and you're not treated like just a number or just a transfer or just a vehicle to make eggs and increase their stats. You're actually a person with feelings as well. And that's really what makes the difference.
It made a huge difference. And I think also with the first few egg retrievals at the other clinic, they were done in a private hospital, as was this one, but it seemed to be that the day hospital that I was going to with the new clinic, a lot of the people going in there were going in there for IVF, whereas the other one, it wasn't an IVF area, if that makes sense. So the nurses and those sorts of things in that hospital probably didn't know everything that I had been through. They just had to do their job and get on with it. Whereas at this place, the new one, the nurses all knew what I had just been through. They were so kind, and after egg retrievals, coming up and just making sure I was okay. And that doesn't always happen, and it should. So yeah, it makes a huge difference when you've got that personable care.
100%. And what happened next?
So I got a silly amount of eggs from a downregulation cycle, which I was really excited to do a downregulation cycle because of everything being the same at the other clinic. We got, I can't remember how many embryos. I think in the end it was only about 3 embryos from 20 eggs. And the really lovely thing about this new fertility specialist was that he said, it is disappointing. He was honest. He said, this is a disappointing number to get 20 eggs and only 3 embryos. And the fresh transfer from that resulted in a pregnancy. But
Sorry, is this the cycle where you didn't want to know what was happening?
No, that was my last cycle. Yeah, so because I'd had 20 eggs and 3 embryos, we couldn't help but be disappointed with that. But I got pregnant, and we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. We got pregnant, but chemical pregnancy happened. I went to the emergency room when I started bleeding. They were lovely, but they couldn't do another beta test because I'd only had one the day before. So it was just, and that wasn't the clinic's fault. That was no one's fault. That was just, everyone had done everything right. I was so glad it was school holidays because I didn't have to try and get myself together. I could come home and I could actually mourn. And yeah, that was really a rough time, especially when at that stage my parents were overseas. So, and they have become a good support network along the way. You know, I spoke to a counsellor who said, who are the people you want to teach how to treat you during IVF? I had written my parents a very long email about right and wrong with me at the moment, that empathy is better than sympathy, those sorts of things. And mum and dad were really, really great with the response to that email.
And I think that's really important as well. And we spoke about this before we started recording. You know, a lot of the times we don't know what we need. You know, we don't know how to be comforted. So it's really great that you were able to articulate quite clearly what do you need, because it changes so much. So I think that is really important as well, being able to tell people what you need and what not to do, and be very clear about it as well, because at the end of the day, they don't know what to do if they haven't been through it themselves, and that's not their fault. So us being able to clearly articulate what we need, if we know that, then that's great. You know, a lot of the times we don't know what we need, but I think that's a great idea that that's what you did.
And the other thing is choosing people. So it's not, I chose my parents and very close family members that I could confide in, because you can't teach everyone how to handle someone who's going through infertility. It's one of those things. The counsellor the counsellor I was seeing at that time, she was like, you're not going to be able to teach everyone, so you have to pick and choose who you speak to. And I think that was a big learning thing for me as well, because when I first started IVF, I was open with everyone, and it wasn't until things started going bad that I realised I can't cope with people's reactions. You know, a lot of people at work knew in my first few rounds that I was going in for an egg retrieval. And when I got back to work, they would be like, how'd it go? And you'd be like, oh my goodness, I can't deal with your excitement over something that is just so devastating to me right now. So I learned very early on that I can't tell everyone, because their excitement for me going through IVF when everything was going so poorly was, that was really hard to say. It was like going for a job interview that you didn't get and trying to explain, but 10 times worse.
Yeah, and we were the same as well towards the end of it. We even chose not to tell our family about it as well, because
Yeah.
I think you find some of the times you're actually comforting them with the disappointment. And so we were just trying to survive ourselves and hold ourselves together without having to be strong for other people as well. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that really touches a nerve with me. It, so many times I'm like, why am I comforting you for my problems? Yeah. So, yeah.
And
then,
so, and what happened next?
Well, we were both tired by then, especially with the chemical pregnancy. So we booked a 5-week trip to America to try and just go, we love each other without children. Let's go on a trip, and we'll worry about this again when we get home. So we had the other two. We had another egg retrieval. Oh no, I had one more transfer and that didn't work. And then we went away. And when we came back, we had one not so great embryo in storage. So the doctor suggested we do another stim cycle. And at that stage, I had sort of said to my husband, if this doesn't work, we have to really look at other options, because I can't keep putting myself through this. I was getting tired of just the stimulating hormones. They make you really tired after a while, and they didn't make me. I didn't feel right in the head when I was on them. Like, I just didn't feel like myself. Wasn't that I was doing anything bad or anything like that. It's just I missed myself. So we just did a normal stim cycle. It wasn't downreg. We got 8 eggs. They were all mature. We got 2 embryos from those 8. So it was like we had 20 before, we had 3, we had 8, and we got 2. So we were like, that's good. But none of those transfers resulted in anything. And the last 2 that we had transferred was a poor one from the previous round and a good one from this round. And we said, let's just put both in. It was getting to be a financial thing by that stage as well, because it's $3,000 to every time you have an embryo transfer. And I thought, if both go in and both fail, then it's $3,000, not 6, because at the end of the day, sometimes you have to make that call. Not a lot of clinics want to put in multiple embryos now. But if I'm completely honest, I wasn't feeling great about them by this stage. We just had so many things not work. And I have a very close friend who I've known since I was 5, and she was a nurse when I was 5. So she's more my parents' friend, but she's like a good family friend. And I had found out only in the last couple of years that her children, who are like cousins to me, were born from a sperm donor. And I sat and I had a big chat with her. And, the biggest thing for her children when they found out that they were donor conceived children was that they were brother and sister. That's all they cared about. They were like, well, he's our dad. We don't care who the donor was. This is our dad here. And so it was good to chat with her and her experience from 25 years ago. So it was a big deal for her to have a sperm donor in her marriage 25 years ago. And that conversation was really important to have, because she just said in the end, she had been through probably just as much as I had and just as many rounds. And in the end, she had said to her husband, I want to be a mum. You want to be a dad. We can't keep doing this to ourselves. We need to look at other options. So when we went in and met with our specialist, we floated the idea past him, and he said, you need 3 things to make a baby. You need sperm, you need eggs, and you need a good uterus. They're the 3 things you need. And he said, you're 37. We don't know if it's your eggs that are causing the problems from previous rounds. He said, your uterus looks good to me, so we don't need to go looking for another uterus. But we do know that there's a bit of a problem with the sperm. So our next round, it wasn't until a number of months later, because we had tried with IUI sperm donor first, because the specialist said, your tubes are fine. But that got delayed because I developed a cyst. So, and you don't realize how much you want something to happen until there's just this delay for no good reason. And after one IUI, I was like, I'm not young enough anymore. I just want to do another round of IVF. I felt like that was going to be the better thing to do. And I took 10 weeks off work. By this stage, I had just finished a second master's. All through these things, I was doing a master's in leadership because I'm an idiot. And I was mentally, physically, I was spent. I was done. So I took long service leave. And I actually didn't want to start my next round of IVF until 2020. Thank God I didn't wait with everything that's going on. But because of Medicare rebates and things like that, it was going to be cheaper for me to do it in 2019. And I went in with a very different attitude. I didn't want to know anything. I was doing another downregulation cycle because, as the doctor said, that had been successful in the past. I just turned 37. So in terms of fertility, that's not a spring chicken anymore. So yeah, we went in, started the downreg. I was overseas at the time when I started the downreg part of the cycle. So it's just one of those things. I got to spend some time with my sister overseas. And I couldn't get back on the flight to come back home. I had a big breakdown at the airport at the thought of going through another round of IVF. I didn't want to do it to myself anymore. I'd had enough. I'm like, this is not how I want to live my life. In my head, I had started planning for life without children. But I came home, was happy to see my husband again, and got on with the cycle. And when I went in for my egg retrieval, I just said to every nurse that I passed, I don't want to know how many eggs. I don't want to know how many eggs. Even when the doctor was scanning the follicles in the lead up, I could see that there were a few there, because by a 5th egg retrieval, you know what you're looking at on the screen. And yeah, I didn't want to know. So we went to the hospital for the egg retrieval, and my husband wanted to know, and he has every right to know. So he went away. He's got a wonderful poker face. So that was great. I had the egg retrieval. I came home and I was fine because I didn't know how many eggs were retrieved. I didn't want to know the fertilization report. My husband did. So I handed him the phone when they called, because it had been so many times that we'd gone from this many, like I had 9 eggs in my first, nothing to transfer. 14 in my next, 1 to transfer. There was just the big drop in numbers.
It's this thing where we just punish ourselves, isn't it? Because there is no rhyme nor reason, and yet we try to find patterns and meaning and all of these different things. And that is really where this roller coaster comes in, because you've got a great number of eggs. So it's just one of those things that you cannot predict. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts, is from the egg retrieval to the fertilization, because it changes every single day.
Yeah. And I had got to the stage where I didn't care how many eggs came out, because that didn't matter. How many embryos were made was the important part.
Yeah.
So I didn't know going into transfer how many embryos had been made. And I went into transfer the calmest I have ever been. Even though I was so anxious leading up to everything else, I was like, it's not in my control. I'd finally gone, I can't control any of this.
You
It had taken me
released it.
took me 3 years, but I couldn't control it anymore. And I went in just, yeah, cool. I drank enough water. I kind of needed to go, but I was comfortable. You can have a comfortably full bladder if you know when to start drinking the water before you go in. So we went in and the doctor was like, you've got 4 embryos. And I was like, great. I didn't know how many eggs were collected. So I was like, great. And he said, they're all good. We're watching some more for tomorrow. And I forgot about those because any other time they've said we're watching more, they had never worked for us. So I was like, 4 is great. We've got 4. Yay, we've got 4.
So you focused on the good. You focused on the positives. You focused on what you did have
That's
then,
right.
which I think is really important.
And I didn't know how many eggs hadn't made it. So I couldn't be upset with anything. And when, the transfer actually happened, eggs splayed, bit of a full bladder, the doctor looked up at the screen, you've got to check that that's your embryo with your name next to it. And he goes, oh, look, it's starting to hatch. And you could actually see the embryo film starting to move. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing in the world. So I remember leaving that transfer and I just said to my husband, I'm more attached to this embryo than I have been to any other embryo because of seeing it's still growing. It's still developing right now in front of our eyes. And he was, of course, really excited as well. The only heartbreaking thing was, when he said, so it was my sperm. Because I was like, oh, we just had a big hug. Yeah. And then, while we were in the 2-week wait, I had completely forgotten about those extra embryos. And they had sent me an email with the embryo report with all the embryos. And there was 9 embryos. We were both like, that means we got 10. And that was when Michael was like, do you want to know how many eggs? I'm like, yeah, okay, you can tell me now. So he's like, there was 22 eggs and there was 20 of them were mature. And that was when I could be excited about that. So I was told everything at a time that suited me, that I could be happy and rejoice, sort of thing. So I just found the whole experience of not knowing, it was almost like I was meditating. It was a calm that I hadn't felt in any of my other rounds. It also helped that I wasn't working as well. So, it is stressful when you go in for a transfer and know you've got to go back to work and those sorts of things. So lessons I've learnt along the way is anytime I had a transfer, I would take the day off work. I wouldn't go back in. So I think there are those sorts of things that along the way made a difference. So yeah, and it worked. Yeah, that one, the first one in, Hatchy Pants as we call him, because we got to see him hatch. Yeah, and now I'm 33-ish weeks pregnant. So yeah, it's very exciting.
There's just
after all of that.
Rebecca, I just think your story and you and everything, this is the most amazing thing, the ups and the downs, and I'm so glad that you have got your happily ever after. Like, it just, I don't know, I was tearing up when I was listening to your story because it's just absolutely, absolutely incredible. And I know that there are so many lessons there that the women who are currently on their journey can gain, learnings, but hope and all of these different things about what to, what not. And for me, I love that, the last one was the releasing control, releasing the attachment to it, and just going into it from this place of peace of whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And I really
Yeah.
love that. So thank you so much for
You're welcome.
to us. And so if you want to follow Rebecca on Instagram, it is IVF Bean Trying. Go over there. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you do for this community.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, this story, and it are inspired just as much as I am, please feel free to love it. Feel free to like it, share it, and make sure you subscribe to this channel as well, because this is just one of many amazing interviews that I am holding with warriors and experts on how you can take back control of your life. And it's all part of the Infertility Unfiltered series. So thanks for watching.